Hello and welcome everyone. Thank you for attending today's IBM Community Webcast featuring the middleware community and the application infrastructure group. My name is Jessica and I'll be moderating today's webcast. Our topic for today is Cloud Pak for Applications Overview. Before we get started, please note that the audio is played through your computer or device and there is no dial-in number. You can enlarge your screens with the 4 arrows located at the top right corner of every box on your screen. We will have a Q&A session towards the end of the presentation, but we encourage everybody to submit your questions at any time directly in the Q&A box located on your dashboard. Please be sure to check out the upcoming series directly in your resource box. You'll see that each series links has an option to sign up for upcoming webcasts, or you can actually watch any of the on-demands that have already taken place in this series, as well as sign up for demo days. Tomorrow, we will email everybody a copy of this webcast recording as well as the slides. Otherwise, you can jump into the WebSphere portal forum to ask any additional questions. With that, I would like to welcome our presenter today. We have Jeff Peary joining us, who is the Program Director for Cloud Pak for Applications. Welcome, Jeff.
Hey, Jessica, thank you. So, let me advance the slides and get started. So thank you, first of all, for taking the time to join us today and part of the whole series of demo days. This session, as the title slide describes, is about Cloud Pak for Applications version 4.1. And this is the overview session where we talk about the 2 use cases, and then we will have follow-up sessions that go into detail in each of those. But this is about setting the scene, understanding the Cloud Pak, and getting clear concept of what the Cloud Pak is trying to address and how we're trying to help you. And so to begin with, one of the things that we like to make clear to our customers everywhere is that whatever you're doing, wherever you are, our goal is to meet you there, to help you on your journey to becoming cloud native, but also to respect the fact that you have a big investment in existing infrastructure and application servers and so on. And so this is important to us because we recognize that it's important to you that we respect where you are and help you move forward from that point. And so we know that as the cloud has influenced all of business, digital transformation has become ever increasingly important as people try to drive up the rate of innovation to get new value to their customers faster. But in order to do that, that also requires some degree of transformation in the business itself. And that can be something about skills, can be about process, can be about tools, can be all those things. And throughout all of this effort to adopt cloud and transform the business, there is always a never-ending focus on the return on investment, and that being able to balance the cost of new projects, new developments against the existing costs of running and maintaining software and services is a challenge, and is one that we hope that we can help with through the Cloud Pak for Applications. And so we recognize that there are some pretty big motivations to move forward, but we also recognize that you need to do that in the context of where you are. It's the statement on the opening slide about wherever you are, we want to meet you there. If we look at the market dynamic, then depending on whose numbers you look at, there is this sort of assessment that there's going to be a huge increase in the number of applications constructed between 2018 and 2023. The number here is 500 million new logical applications, which is larger than the total number of apps that have been built in the last 40 years. And it's staggering to believe that that is true on one hand, but at the same time, I'm pretty sure most of us recognize that the sense of speed of delivery and the rate of change has increased already since 2018. And we see, new markets opening and new demands created through unexpected and unprecedented global changes, along with just general growth and evolution of business needs and business propositions. So it's perhaps not quite so surprising when you start to think about it. And all of these new apps need to have the right kind of infrastructure and tooling and capabilities to support their creation, but also to support their long-term operation. And so there are a lot of influences, the way that we build, the tools that we use, The nature of development itself is changing. As I said, processes are changing, so the shift towards agile methodologies and an increase on the focus around developer and operations teams working in collaboration. Obviously, the DevOps movement growing to become, say, the DevSecOps movement, as obviously security plays a huge part in the needs and the essential components of operating a business successfully. And so all of this is influencing the way we think about and provide platform capabilities. And in order for you to drive up the rate of innovation and consume innovative technologies faster and keep pace with the demands, we're looking at a broad spectrum of needs that you're facing, and things like the areas described by this slide. So there is obviously some kind of sense of the cloud itself having an influence over architectures. The way you scale applications has changed. The way that you exploit legacy is changing because of the cloud. And it leads to things like disaster recovery being different because of the nature of cloud. And so you can see here that, there's a whole spectrum of workload types and workload implications that come about as a result of the transformation to cloud. And through Cloud Pak for Applications, we're beginning to look at how we can address these discrete needs. But as I said at the beginning, there's a big part of business which is about understanding where you are today. And we know that there is a large investment in existing applications. And for some of those applications, they've been able to move to the cloud. Depending on which figures you look at, then there's an estimate of around 20 to maybe 25% of workloads have moved to the cloud. And the question here of why is it that number? Why is it not larger? What is it that is perhaps preventing some of those applications from moving? And we can all make assessments as to why that might be. And for some applications, it's relatively simple to move them to the cloud. You can package them up maybe into containers, and they will run quite successfully without much else being required to be done to them. But there are other characteristics of this modernization process that we need to consider. Obviously, there are things like skills. As you move towards a more cloud-oriented architecture, in the sense of building something that is, truly cloud native, then you start to look at new technologies around things like microservices, the architecture of microservices, the introduction of containers and Kubernetes for deploying and orchestrating resources and application components. Obviously, open source is playing a huge part, as innovation in open source provides new opportunities to get like technology advantage. How do you consume that and also do that in a safe and reliable way? And so there are lots of influences that are involved in and potentially delay or slow the rate at which you can modernize applications. And if you look closely at applications, for instance, existing WebSphere applications running on traditional WebSphere, then there is a path forward through the WebSphere portfolio from traditional WebSphere to WebSphere Liberty, but there is also recognition that there are differences between those runtime environments. There are subtle differences in the APIs, and making code changes becomes one of those things that is, it's easy to know that is likely to be required, but it is hard to understand the details and know where to begin. And so as we go through the rest of this presentation, we'll come back to this sort of sense of modernization. And indeed, one of the specific follow-up sessions that we have planned in the agenda for demo days focuses in on modernization specifically, goes through the modernization tools we have. So modernization is an essential and an important part of our Cloud Pak story. And in the context of the slides we've been through already, there is this sense of wanting to build new and also modernize what you have today, because it represents a lot of invested value and a lot of business value. In order to modernize, there has to be, a target platform in mind. Where are we going with our modernization? And as I'm sure you're all well aware, IBM and Red Hat have merged and Red Hat has been acquired by IBM. And so Cloud Pak and Cloud Paks generally are exploiting the benefits of the Red Hat and the IBM partnership. Red Hat have made and continue to make a huge investment in open source technologies. They have a great set of developer tools, and they have an amazing platform in the form of OpenShift. And when you combine that with IBM, then you get the advantage of IBM's broad middleware portfolio with these new open source technologies and platforms. And one of the key values of the Pak is the relationship we have to Red Hat, and Red Hat OpenShift in particular. So I mentioned that Red Hat have invested heavily in OpenShift already. And what this slide is trying to show is that there is more to OpenShift, the platform, than simply it being a distribution of Kubernetes. Obviously, Kubernetes has become kind of the de facto standard for container orchestration. But Kubernetes alone is not a platform. It is a platform for building platforms. And what that means is that you have the container orchestration capabilities, but it's lacking some of the other core functions needed to operate an enterprise level platform. And so what Red Hat are doing, and it's tried to be represented on this slide on the left-hand side by all the icons, Red Hat have taken Kubernetes and they've started to add and integrate a vast array of open source projects that provide the additional function and capability needed to make it an enterprise-grade platform. And that's what they package and sell as Red Hat OpenShift Container Platform. And so their investment in integration, their investment in testing, their investment in open source upstream projects is all wrapped up and delivered as OpenShift Container Platform. And from IBM's perspective, this is a great advantage for us because it gives us our strategic container platform. It gives us the portability across all of the public cloud providers, and it brings with it consistency in operation and developer experience. And as I'm sure you're well aware, it forms the foundation of IBM's middleware portfolio and Cloud Paks. And so what this slide is showing is that there is this common pattern that all Cloud Paks exhibit, which is that at their foundation, there is the OpenShift Container Platform. And on top of that, there is IBM's broad portfolio of middleware in containerized form. And this allows us to make sure that we are packaging and certifying the software that we're providing on top of that platform, testing it, doing integration work with it, so that you can be confident that when you deploy a Cloud Pak, it is truly an integrated and supported and complete stack of middleware software. And so this pattern is carried out through the whole portfolio of IBM's Cloud Paks, of which the first 6 are shown on the slide here. Specifically, we're going to focus in on the one on the left with the yellow border around it, Cloud Pak for applications. But as you can see, there is that consistency. Each of the Cloud Paks, whether it's data, integration, automation, multi-cloud, or security, have at their core, or in their foundation, OpenShift. And as I mentioned already, that gives us the portability across both on-premise deployments and public cloud providers, as well as out into the edge and through to Cloud Pak System, the integrated hardware appliance. So let's take a closer look now at the core use cases of Cloud Pak for applications. As I said, we want to meet you where you are. So one of the core tenets of the Cloud Pak is to be able to run existing applications where they are. And those could be WebSphere applications or JBoss applications. And as a trade up to the Pak, you can continue to run existing applications where they are without requiring you to migrate anything because of the way our license is structured. It means that you can continue to run your TWAS ND where it is, and at your own pace begin to think about modernizing and building new. And as you do so, then you can branch out into OpenShift. And so the other 2 core use cases, and these are the ones that we're really going to focus on through this session, are around modernization and building new. In terms of the way that we deliver the value, the Pak is structured, as you can kind of see on the right-hand side here, with the red and the blue and the green. So, as I've said already, OpenShift forms the foundation. In the middle, we have the collection of runtimes. These come from both Red Hat and IBM, so that's the whole of the WebSphere portfolio, and the Red Hat runtimes from Red Hat, including JBoss, but also including support for Spring, Node, Wildfly, and the broader set of runtimes that Red Hat provide. And then on top of that, as part of our value of the Cloud Pak, we now have and are introducing this notion of accelerators for teams. In previous releases of the Cloud Pak, we have talked about an open source project called Cabanero.io, and as part of Cloud Pak, that was referred to as Cabanero Enterprise. So if you've heard that before, that still exists, but we are transitioning our name. So we're talking about it now in terms of accelerators for teams as we refine the nature of those capabilities and realize that what we're talking about is the value that we can bring to teams building on top of this combined runtime and container platform that we provide through Cloud Pak for applications. And so if we look even closer in detail, the next slide kind of takes an exploded view of the four-layered stack there at the bottom right of this slide and really looks at all of the piece parts that are in the pack. And I admit that the first time you see the slide, there's a lot to take in, so give me a moment to talk through it. So this slide shows broadly everything that is in the pack. And you can see the banner headlines talk about running existing apps, modernizing existing apps, and building new cloud native and running containerized applications. So if we start on the right-hand side, and we'll look at this in a little bit more detail in a moment, you can see the stack that I was just referring to. On the bottom of the right-hand side is OpenShift container platform. Then on top of that, we have the various runtime capabilities from both IBM and Red Hat. On top again, then there is the Red Hat Code Ready Workspaces, which is Red Hat's hosted IDE environment. And this gives us a common set of developer tools that we share between both IBM and Red Hat. And then finally, the top layer there is our accelerators for teams with enterprise governance. And we'll talk about those in just a moment in a little bit more detail, and the stack in a little bit more detail. On the left-hand side, we also have our existing workloads represented by WebSphere and JBoss, and the modernization tools that accompany them. And so through Cloud Pak for applications, what you should be able to begin to see from this slide is that clearly, by virtue of the top left-hand corner, you can continue to run existing applications on WebSphere. But as you realize the potential of those can be increased through a combination of modernization and containerization, then we have the tools through Transformation Advisor and the toolkits that are provided there that help you first understand and then progressively containerize and modernize those applications from traditional WebSphere onto the Liberty runtime running in containers, which can then be deployed and exploiting the container and cloud native capabilities on the right-hand side of this slide. So from a whole pack perspective, whilst this slide is quite busy and says, covers an awful lot of ground, hopefully you can see from it that we're able to span both the existing workload needs as well as the new needs and the modernized and containerized needs as you evolve applications and bring them forward to the container platform. So let's take a little bit of a closer look here, and by way of a call out to one of our future sessions, there'll be a deep dive session and a demo on the 4th of June that really focuses on the building new cloud native and the accelerators piece of the story. And so one of my colleagues will be going through showing off some of the tooling and some of the capabilities we have there in the cloud native space. For the purpose of this session, what I wanted to focus on is just to give a sense of the value that the container platform itself brings and some of the piece parts that we've added without getting into too much detail about accelerators specifically. This is just to recognize the importance of OpenShift. It's not just about being a Kubernetes layer. It's got a lot of capabilities in it that are absolutely valuable as you modernize and bring workloads to the platform. And so in Cloud Pak for Applications version 4, which we released in December of last year, we brought the latest version of OpenShift at that time, which was version 4.2, to the Cloud Pak. And that included a series of capabilities from Red Hat, including operators, which allow you to automate and simplify the management of the platform itself, And in fact, operators now form a fundamental component of how we are building our accelerated capabilities and the accelerators function. And they enable you to more simply manage the platform and the deployment of applications onto that platform. Red Hat also have done an awful lot of work for bringing forward features for microservices. So things like the service mesh is now supported as part of OpenShift. And that exploits various open source projects under the covers. So things you may have heard of like Istio, Kyali, and Jaeger for visualizing and tracing. So all of those are built into OpenShift, the platform, so that as you adopt a cloud-native style of development and architecture, then you can exploit those capabilities, and they're delivered, obviously, through OpenShift, through the Pak. There's also focus in OpenShift on the developer console, and in 4Q, we introduced our support for OpenShift container platform on Z. So there is also, for those of you with the background and the mainframe, we have support for the container platform on Z. And we continue to evolve that support into this year, and we'll be continuing to update and grow that as we go through the year. In addition, then, we recently, in the first quarter, introduced Cloud Pak for Applications version 4.1. So this allows us to move forward and keep pace with Red Hat's development cycles around OpenShift itself. So you can see here that we have moved across to OpenShift 4.3 as our sort of default installed version of OpenShift, but still maintaining support for the previous version. We also now introduced, and it was mentioned on one of the earlier slides, the code-ready workspaces. So code-ready workspaces is now clearly part of the Pak and part of the value that the Pak delivers. We continue to provide and work on Transformation Advisor. In fact, we'll talk about that in just a moment. So we'll come back to that one. But one of the key concepts that we have had as part of our Cloud Pak experience is the idea of applications and application stacks. And so if you've been keeping up with some of the earlier announcements, you'll have heard about how when we introduced Cloud Pak for Applications originally, we talked about, as I said earlier, Cabanero and Cabanero Enterprise, which is now renamed as Accelerators for Teams. One of the capabilities that we provided there was this idea of an application stack, which allows you to package up both a runtime and a framework along with template code, if it's appropriate, and bake that into what we call an application stack. And that application stack represents a versioned collection of things for developers to use. And by versioning it, we provide a degree of management around it. And the management extends into understanding how to build and deploy those stacks into production. And so the idea here is that you can collectively, through like a combination of, say, lead architects, enterprise architects, and lead developers, they can define the basic blueprint of an application stack and capture those decisions and policy decisions, and maybe say, some decisions about libraries that are standard that the team is going to use, and bake those into that application stack. Those are stored in the Stack Hub. The item we're looking at here in the middle, Simplified Application Stack Management, is about how we manage and simplify the management of those stacks. And those stacks then benefit from our end-to-end deployment technology. So that's a combination of pipeline builds, scanning of the build during the pipeline process, GitOps operations and management, and then logging and monitoring and tracing when deployed into production. So the stacks really are a fundamental and foundational part of what we're building in Cloud Pak for apps. In addition, we talked about modernization of it, and one of the last piece on this slide talks about Application Navigator. Application Navigator is a view into your OpenShift environment that recognizes and respects the sense and the notion of an application as you know it today. So if you're a WebSphere traditional operations person, and you have a sense of the component parts of an application as they're represented in the WebSphere admin console, then those concepts of an application come forward and are represented by Application Navigator. The key thing here is to recognize that Application Navigator is allowing you to see both traditional WebSphere components alongside new cloud-native components running in OpenShift through a single pane of glass. It's a single view into what represents an application in the new world. And so Application Navigator is a great tool that helps simplify that transition from existing traditional WebSphere to containerized and potentially cloud-native capabilities on OpenShift, and gives you a view and an ease of navigating back to those existing application assets, even if they're still running in TWAS, from the OpenShift console. So as we get towards the end of the session here, I really wanted to focus in on giving you like a preview of where we're going with the next session. And I must apologize, the date on this slide will differ from that in the collection of assets that Jessica described at the beginning of this session. I think the correct date here is the 21st of May, where we will go into a deep dive on modernization. So what I wanted to do is just spend a couple of moments before we switch to questions, talking about Transformation Advisor. So on this slide, we're looking at where existing applications are running today, particularly around traditional WebSphere and JBoss, and the tools that we have to help modernize those applications and bring them to the container platform. So hopefully you've already heard a little bit about IBM Cloud Transformation Advisor. Cloud Transformation Advisor is a combination of tools that help you understand your existing application estate. With our tooling, what it will allow you to do is inspect all of your existing applications, and it will help you make an assessment of them in terms of how easy it is to move them to containers, and how easy it is to update them to, particularly in the case of traditional WebSphere, to exploit the Liberty runtime. And Liberty is an important part of our cloud-native story because it represents our forward-looking runtime for the modernization of existing and the building of new cloud-native applications that come with if you're modernizing from traditional WebSphere and moving to Liberty, Liberty is the ideal runtime to move to because it respects the needs of containerization. It is very lightweight, and you can remove from it the pieces of the API runtime that you do not require, keep the footprint small. And so part of Transformation Advisor, and hopefully we'll be able to show you some of this in the follow-up session, is about understanding your existing traditional applications and then seeing how easy it is to move them to containers and to Liberty. And there are a set of reports that we will provide. There is an overview that for each of the applications will show you our estimate of whether it's a relatively easy or moderate or difficult application in terms of what effort is required to move it forward into the Liberty runtime. And then it goes beyond that and says, these are the specific pieces of code that will need to be changed, that give guidance on the API changes where those are necessary in order to make that migration easier. And a key part of this is it allows you to provide your own data and estimates on effort. So as part of your planning process, Transformation Advisor provides a great tool to both understand the portfolio of applications and to begin to plan for their migration forward to Cloud Pak for applications. And as I said, this is the next session that we will go through in the demo days on the 21st of May. So at this point, I know we're really close to the end of time and doesn't leave much for questions, but as by way of a final slide to rest on, I just wanted to invite you, if you haven't already, to sign up to the WebSphere Customer Advisory Board, where you can interact with us directly, get more examples of these labs and additional information as part of that. I think we are just on time.
So what we're going to do is we'll continue the conversation in the community. So you can post any additional questions in the WebSphere portal group. In our follow-up email, we'll make sure you have a link to that thread so it's easy to navigate to. I just want to thank everybody for joining us today for our webcast. Please be sure to check out the series again. You can find the links directly in your resource center. Otherwise, they'll be in your follow-up email as well. Thank you, Jeff, so much for that presentation, and we hope everyone enjoys the remainder of their day. Thank you.